welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wish's Mama, and on today's episode of Mom Street USA, I thought it would be kind of a fun topic to chat about preparing your children's five senses for the Disney parks. So, something a little bit different, but something still helpful nonetheless. We're going to talk about things that they might see, they might hear, taste, smell, touch, all of those good things. So, that is the plan for today. So, thanks for joining me for this super fun episode to come. And we're going to kind of jump right in to talking about the different things that we can experience in the Disney parks. So, Disney can definitely be overwhelming to the senses, not only to kids, to adults, to everybody alike, not only to people who are maybe a little bit more sensory sensitive, but also just to like the general population. There is a ton going on at all times in all of the parks. So today we are going to take a look at what to expect a little bit for your five senses when it comes to visiting the Disney parks. So we're going to go through each sense individually and chat a little bit about some things to expect and maybe some things that I enjoy in those categories. So that is the plan going forward. And we are going to kick it off with the sense of touch. So let's talk about what you and your kiddos may experience if you are visiting the Disney parks when it comes to things to touch. Now, I can't get past touch without first mentioning that there are lots of germs. There are lots of germs all over all of the spaces that your children will want to touch at Disney. And some of them they'll need to touch, right? Handrails when going up and down ramps and up and down steps are a big one. There are things in the queue that they're going to want to touch. There are things just walking down the pathways that they're going to want to touch. So my biggest thing is please make sure you grab a little bottle of sanitizer. I think this is something that most of us carry around with us, post pandemic. I feel like it's much more of the norm. I mean, I know that I have got one in my car, I've got one in my bag. My kids have one in their bag. So it's just the norm anymore, but make sure that you've got some sanitizer. We prefer the spray ones, over the, like, old school kind of gel sanitizers that you can get. I think they're a little bit easier, for the kiddos. The gel ones tend to just, like, slide off their hands if their hands are not, like, perfectly level whenever you give it to them, so I prefer the spray ones. They make all sorts of different scents and kinds, and that you can decide on your own. But be prepared with your hand sanitizer when it comes to touch in the parks. Um, that being said, there are tons of interactive cues that Disney put there because they want you to touch and experience it. Again, beware of the germs, pack your sanitizer. But there are places in the queue that have a ton of interactive spaces that you can touch and play with. A lot of them are at Magic Kingdom. That Magic Kingdom tends to have the most in the queue area, at least. So Seven Doors Mine Train has some interactive things that you can look at and touch and experience. There are barrels in the one room that you can spin. There are gems that light up that you can touch. They sometimes have some water features in the queue that you can touch as well, if they're up and running. Just depends on the day with that. But definitely a ton of things to touch in there. If you visit the Haunted Mansion at Magic Kingdom and you get to go into the extended queue, into the like graveyard scene, there is actually stuff in there that you can touch. So you will kind of walk through these big, tall tombstone catacomb type wall structures, but they actually have interactive things that you can touch. So there are big pictures all over them that if you touch the instruments, they'll make different sounds for the instrument. There's a cat on one of them that if you touch, you can hear the cat make a sound. So lots of things in that space that you can touch and interact with as well. Uh, if you are someone who's going to be riding the Dumbo attraction, there is a whole play area in there of things that your kids can touch and crawl around and climb on, and use their sense of touch to kind of explore that space as well. And then one of the other really famous interactive queue areas is the one at Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, where you get to go all throughout Rabbit's garden. Now, I will say with that one, you don't get to experience that aspect of it if you have a lightning lane. So, if you are someone who wants to let your kiddos run around in there, you gotta brave the standby queue for that one. But they have all sorts of things that you can wheels that you can spin, and there's a whole little beehive area where you can slide the bees along the railing. Lots of places for that. And then as you come around the corner after that, there is the infamous poo honey wall, where if the screens are working, now I will say the screens have not been super reliable lately. The last, I think, 4 or 5 times that I've gone on that attraction, they have either been not working at all. On my last trip just last week, they were not, none of the poo wall screens were working at all. The trip before that, it was like 2 of them were working. So you'll have to see if you get lucky. Hopefully, I'm wondering if Disney is trying to refurb them. I don't really know. Not really sure. They haven't really said what's going on there. But if you are in the queue and they are working, it will look like honey is running down the wall. Now, this one, you actually don't have to touch it to make it work. But if you run your hand close to it, like you're clearing and wiping the honey away, there are little hidden characters that will come through. So you can definitely touch if your kiddos really need that tactile touch to get them through that queue. But if you're a little more germ conscious, just keep in mind that you can just wave your hand over top to satisfy the ability to clear that honey away for those characters. So those are just some of the interactive queue areas that you can find. There are also interactive spaces where there are things that you can touch and play with after several of the rides. A lot of these actually happen to be at Epcot. So if you ride on Journey to the Imagination with Figment, then as you exit there, there's a whole play area where you can touch. They've got screens you can touch and buttons you can touch, all sorts of things there that you can do. In Spaceship Earth, same thing. As you come down of the ramp after you have thanked the Phoenicians and ridden Spaceship Earth, there are lots of interactive buttons and screens that you can play with in there. With Nemo, if you ride Under the Seas, what is it? The Seas with Nemo and Friends. There we go. I had to get the official title in there. If you do the Seas with Nemo and Friends and when you exit, you enter that aquarium space, there are actual interactive elements of that aquarium as well that you can find in some of the rooms. Not all of them have them, but again, lots of spaces where touch can be utilized if your kiddo is someone that needs that sensory output and input of being able to touch things. Something else to also consider is there may be new textures that your child has never experienced before. I know something that my kids and I have talked about in the parks is that there, even just on the ground that you walk on, there are new textures that you can touch and feel through your shoes. Some kiddos have never seen brick or cobblestone, and you can find that in several of the parks, especially Magic Kingdom. Magic Kingdom has a lot of different surfaces that you can see when it comes to like your walking paths and Main Street and sidewalks and walkways and things like that. The hub grass is a different texture than some other grass that you may have experienced because it's more of the like astroturf kind of style of grass rather than like real natural grass. So again, lots of different elements in the parks that you can touch and feel and have that sensation fulfilled when it comes to the sense of touch. Let's move on now to the second sense that we are going to talk about is sight. So again, this one should be very obvious. Touch was a little bit trickier to kind of think about what the different textures and places that you can touch are, but sight is a really big one, right? So many new, exciting things to see, lots of new experiences, lots of immersive spaces that they maybe have not been exposed to before, right? That is one of the biggest things sensory-wise with kiddos that can be overwhelming, is sometimes all of the sights and colors that they intake and have to process and kind of figure out what it is that they are looking at and experiencing. Some of my favorite sights to see in the parks, especially if it is your first trip or even if it's not your first trip, the park icons, right? So every park has its own specific icon that goes along with that park. You've got Cinderella Castle at Magic Kingdom. Being able to see that is absolutely incredible, right? Whether you can see it from the end of Main Street or you walk all the way down until you're right up against that stage, or even if you're able to go underneath and look from the entry, right? That's one of my favorite views is when those walkways that go underneath the castle are open. If you go from the front and you stop kind of right in front of that drawbridge door and you just look up at the spires of the castle, I think is such a crazy fun sight. It's so magical and immersive, and I love that. Not to mention when you walk through the castle, all of the beautiful mosaic tiles that are underneath there that give you the story of Cinderella underneath something so wonderful to see. That's a little bit hidden that if you don't walk through the castle or you don't time it right, because it's not open all day long, right? When they do the stage shows, they do close that off for the performers. But if you are able to catch it, it is just absolutely amazing. Over at Animal Kingdom, the Tree of Life is the icon over there. And that one, again, it's one of those things with all of these icons where it's beautiful to look at from afar, but then it's even more magical when you get close to it, right? The Tree of Life has hundreds of animals carved into the trunk and the roots of that whole experience. And there are walkways that will take you right up to where you can touch the tree. We talked about touch just before, but being able to look at all the animals, and you can almost play I Spy with your kids as you're looking through there to see what animals you can see, and can you find this one? Can you find that one? So many different things to see with that. Um, at Hollywood Studios, the icon has really kind of become Tower of Terror. That park is, I feel like it's just in constant flux of figuring out its identity, but the Tower of Terror has been the icon of the recent years that we have seen over there. I also like the Chinese theater as an icon as well, of course, with the tie-in to the studios and the movies and things like that. But again, same thing with Tower of Terror. You can literally walk right up to that building. It is spectacular when they do their different light displays on there. Christmas time, they have all sorts of fun lights that they do on the tower, but being able to experience that and kind of that's a really unique one because it's a little bit spookier, right? The Tower of Terror gives you a little bit of like an eerie feeling kind of when you're looking at it. So something completely different that your sense of sight will kind of guide you to, which is super fun. And then, of course, Epcot has Spaceship Earth, or the giant Epcot golf ball, as everyone refers to it as. And that one is just spectacular for its magnitude. It is so fun to walk underneath and look up at the geodesic sphere as you walk underneath it. And then one of my favorite things about that is the nighttime show that they added just a few years ago for the 50th anniversary. They went and added all of those LED lights over there, and they've continued to do those nighttime little rotating songs and shows on Spaceship Earth, and that is one of my absolute favorite things that came about from the 50th anniversary of Disney World, and I am so glad that they kept it because I love just sitting and watching and enjoying the site that is Spaceship Earth at Epcot. So again, all of those park icons are just completely different, something that your kiddo will have never experienced before. And, it might, as much as we all want to rush around on our trips and kind of try to get all the rides done and get to the shows and see the characters and all those types of things. Sometimes it is so needed to just give your kiddos a few extra minutes to absorb the sights and take them in and digest them and figure out what it is that they're looking at and what it's making them feel. Sometimes we all need just a few extra seconds or minutes to process. So I think that can be really important to remember, especially when it comes to those big park icons. Something else that is a new sight for many kids that visit the parks are fireworks. Some kiddos may be familiar with fireworks if you've got a local 4th of July or other fireworks show that you take them to. But the Disney fireworks are a whole nother level, right? So again, thinking about how your kiddo may react to watching that happen, because if they haven't been exposed to it, it may be a little jarring to them. And we're just talking about sight right now. We haven't even gotten to sound and hearing later on. We'll talk about fireworks again, but just seeing some of that, seeing the projections on the castle or seeing, the water effects that come with things like Phantasmic or Luminous at Epcot. There's lots to see when it comes to those nighttime shows and fireworks. So, kind of prepping them ahead of time for that, I think, is a really good idea. I don't know that you necessarily need to prep them ahead of time for the park icons that we just talked about because it's hard to describe that ahead of time, right? It's hard to explain what these massive icons are like. But I feel like with the fireworks, I always suggest if your kiddo has not ever experienced fireworks or a show like that before, you may just wanna prep them, especially if they're a kiddo that typically enjoys being prepped before a new experience. It's always a good idea. The other thing is seeing characters, right? So if we're talking about sight, seeing characters can be a little, I don't wanna say jarring because that kinda has a negative connotation, but can be just a completely new experience for so many kids, and adults alike too, right? I remember the first time I was walking through, Fantasyland at Magic Kingdom, and I came across, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger walking to their character meet, and they were just walking down the sidewalk there, and it was so amazing to me how bright orange Tigger was when I saw him. So things like that, that it's just you you just have to be kind of ready to coach them through that. You have to be ready and maybe have prepped them a little bit about, hey, when we're walking through this space, we may see some character friends that are going to be walking around. We got to experience over last May when we went as a family, they were doing the Cool Kids Summer event. And back in Fantasyland, they had tons of roaming characters that were out during that early morning time, that early entry time for resort guests. And, I'm glad that my kids had experience with characters because they had never experienced those characters roaming like that before. That is still something that's so new to Disney World that it's clear that they've been kind of testing the waters. The roaming characters exist more at Disneyland. Well, we haven't been to Disneyland, so having them having already had experiences seeing characters, that was really helpful. The other way that this can be really helpful to kind of prep your kids for characters is in parades. Your kiddo may be fine to, sitting and watching the parade or standing with you and watching the parade, but the second they see that favorite character, they may try to run out and go say hi and give them hugs because that's what they want to do. They get excited. So you just need to be prepared to kind of coach them through uh we're gonna see the characters, we're gonna wave at the characters. Oh, this is an experience where we get to see them and do a high five or get an autograph or get a photo taken, so just kind of preparing them for the different situations where they may see the characters so that they understand, and can be kinda coached through what is the appropriate reaction for any given point with those characters. So, some other things that they may see while you're in the parks, it may be a new experience for your kiddos, are the shows. There's the Frozen sing along show, the Beauty and the Beast show, Little Mermaid, and Villains. Those are all at Hollywood Studios. Fabulous shows to go and see. They're such wonderful experiences that you can have. Talking about characters, so many of them have characters in them. So prepping to see those characters and experience those live entertainment options are wonderful. Over at Animal Kingdom, they've got, of course, the Festival of the Lion King and the Finding Nemo musical. Again, amazing shows to go see, especially if those movies speak to your kids, right? If those any of those that I listed off, if you're like, "Oh my gosh, they would love that," definitely take some time to go and see and experience those shows, for sure. And then also at Epcot, they've got tons of performers out along World Showcase. So, uh, if there's anyone in particular that you're wanting to see, do a little bit of research, take a look into see who's where. They've got street performers, they've got jugglers, they've got drummers, they've got musicians, they've got magicians, they've got all sorts of things out there as well. So those are really fun things to experience and to watch and see as you're walking around the parks as well. Now, I do have to talk about just 2 little fun, last little parts of our site here on our prepping our kiddos' 5 senses for Disney World, and that is there are 2 particular colors that you can kind of look for in the parks with your kiddo. Now, this works better if you've got, probably elementary age and older kiddos because they'll kind of understand the purpose, but Disney has, created and patented a couple different colors for their theme parks. So the 2 that I want to just mention, in case you don't know, are Go Away Green and Blending Blue. So both of these colors have been specifically formulated to help Disney hide things in plain sight. So oftentimes we will see the front facade of an attraction, but the actual meat of the the attraction exists in a show building that is not in plain view for many guests. But maybe you might be able to see that building from the parking lot or from this area that wraps around because there's a bathroom back there, something like that. So Disney has created both of these colors to hide show buildings and other elements just in plain sight. One of my favorite instances of this is if you are driving to Epcot, or sometimes I think if you're monorailing, you can see it as well. The show building for the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind roller coaster is a massive show building, as you can imagine, because that is a huge, massive roller coaster attraction. But you can see it from a certain area in the parking lot, and it is like classic blending blue, and it is identical to that Florida blue sky. So it's fun to see those things and kind of point out, like, oh, Disney's trying to hide that, but we saw it kind of things, which is why I say older kiddos, elementary age and up will be maybe a little bit more able to appreciate that. But I just had to stick that little fun fact in there for our last little discussion about things that you will see when you are in the Disney parks. So we've talked about touch, we've talked about sight. Let's hop over now and talk about taste. So, taste is a huge one when it comes to the Disney parks. There are so many new flavors to experience in the Disney parks, but there are also familiar flavors too. So even with picky eaters, and we've talked about eating a lot on this podcast and given our advice on, places to eat and character meals and all that kind of stuff. But just be reminded that even with picky eaters at the Disney parks, you can still find food for them. You're going to be able to find versions of mac and cheese, chicken tenders, pizza, things like that. So even though there are a ton of new experiences that they can have with food, you will still be able to find them what they also like and enjoy, and that they will eat if they are, particular eaters. Um, Something to keep in mind is taking a look at the time of year that you're visiting to see what festival is going on over at Epcot. Epcot pretty much has a festival, I don't know, 80% of the year. There is some sort of extra festival going on over there. Like currently, we're in food and wine for the next couple weeks here. But the festivals over there with their food booths are a fantastic way to try some new things and some new flavors without having to order a whole entree dish or a whole meal that you don't know whether or not your kiddo is going to eat. So, the way that the food booths run, they give you more of a sampling size. They're not giving you a full, huge portion. Some are bigger than others. It really just depends on what you're ordering and what the booth has to offer. But they are not giving you a full entree's worth of these different offerings that they have on their menus. So, it's a really, really great way to spend a little bit less, get some new flavors, and let your kiddo try some things that maybe you would be hesitant to let them try in any other circumstance. So keep that in mind that it will give your kiddo the ability to try some new things that they may or may not end up liking. So keep that in mind. A couple park staples when it comes to taste and foods. Dole Whip is a big one. If you're not familiar with Dole Whip, you can get it a couple different places across the parks. But it is the pineapple Dole brand soft serve that is pretty iconic for the Disney parks. Corn dog nuggets or corn dogs from Casey's Corner at Magic Kingdom, which is the hot dog place at the end of Main Street right before you get to the hub area in Magic Kingdom. Those are pretty iconic, and a lot of people make sure to get to stop and get those every trip that they take. Mickey pretzels, I'm a huge fan of Mickey pretzels. The funny thing is about Mickey pretzels is there's nothing, like, amazingly delicious about Mickey pretzels. I think they're just such an iconic staple because they're shaped like Mickey and you can find them all over property, that they have just become this staple of Disney World food when it comes to visiting the parks. Also popcorn, again, popcorn is a big one that there's nothing absolutely spectacular about the majority of the popcorn across property. Now, you can find some fun flavors and different things when it comes to popcorn as well. There's maple popcorn in Epcot, those types of things. But generally speaking, it's just popcorn. But there's something about Disney popcorn that just hits differently. And then the other one is Mickey Premium Bars. So if you're an ice cream person and you want to experience a park staple, getting a Mickey head shaped Mickey Premium Bar is a really good way to go for taste. So that's kind of in a nutshell what taste looks like in the parks. Again, it's going to vary greatly based on what foods your kiddo wants to try or is willing to try or doesn't want to try or likes to eat. But there are tons of different options, especially at Epcot when it comes to tasting different things in the parks. Let's move on to a closely related sense, which is smell. So the sense of smell, let's talk about all of the smells that you may find in the Disney parks. Now, we're going to keep this mostly positive because, there are always unwanted smells no matter where you go in public spaces, I feel like. So we're going to keep this very positive when it comes to that. But there are so many specific scents in the parks that are used to influence guests, whether it's positive or negative. Um, One fun thing about the scents is that Disney actually has a patent on a smell emitting system called a smellitizer. So this is something that they created back in the mid 80s and then had a patent on. And these machines, these smellitizer machines, are strategically located throughout the parks, and they use a pressurized gas to dispense lab hatched fragrances. So they are, responsible for blowing out, scents of baked goods and sugary confections over on Main Street. If you're near a popcorn stand, you might say, "Wow, the smell of this popcorn is really potent, like, I can really smell it." It's not just from the natural popcorn, it's those smellitizers that are pumping out that scent to entice the guests into following their nose and figuring out what is creating that amazing scent. Um, so I just think that that's super fun that Disney has like a specific scent, a specific way that they emit these scents out into the parks to entice guests. And there are scents all across the parks and resorts. It's really incredible when you sit down and think about if you've been to the parks or the resorts, what scents first come to mind. Everybody's going to have a different answer. Even people in our live chat comments right now are talking about attractions, they're talking about popcorn, they're talking about resort lobbies. So like there are so many different things that you can think about. Some of my favorites for me personally. The water at the Pirates of the Caribbean is very nostalgic. That bromine smell, I feel like you smell that and you just think Disney ride. And mainly Pirates. You will find that scent a little bit other places, but I feel like it's the strongest at Pirates of the Caribbean. Um, in Epcot at Soarin' around the world, they have a couple scents that I really like. I like these scent in the African scene with the elephants. It smells just like really earthy and grassy kind of, and I like that scent. And then the Fiji scene where you're kind of going over those tropical waters, that Fiji water smell is just one of my all-time favorite scents in all of the parks. In Mickey's PhilharMagic, they have a scene where you're in Beauty and the Beast for the Be Our Guest scene, and there's a pie that comes close to your face with the 3D effects that they have and they pump in that scent of freshly baked pie, which is wonderful and amazing. Uh, in Ratatouille, if you're back over at Epcot riding Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, there are a couple different scents in there, but primarily the one that I like is the bread smell that you get when you're in that bakery section of that ride. Ugh, I love baked goods. This is why I love baking so much because it makes my house smell amazing, but I love the scent of the bread in that scene as well. Um, if you're still hanging in Epcot, Spaceship Earth has a couple different scents, but the most famous or infamous one is the scene of Rome because Rome is burning in that particular scene in that ride. And it has just a very distinct scent to it, that is just I can't even describe it. You have to just go on the attraction to experience it, but I like that smell. And then the last one is one of my all-time favorite attractions at Walt Disney World is Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom, and there is a scene where you're just going through uh, the foliage on Pandora on the attraction, and it's just this floral, tropical water scent that is just unreal. It is one of my favorites. I love it so much. So, those are some of my favorites. Again, no matter who you ask that has been to the Disney parks, they're gonna have a different list of what scents, like, just immediately bring them back, right? My favorite is I'll be, walking through a store like Target or something and, "Oh, we need some candles." You go through and smell it, and it's like, "Oh, this one smells like the Fiji water in Soarin'," or, "Oh, this one smells like this." My husband and I are are known for we will go through, like, the Bath& and Body Works candles to see if we can find ones that smell like Disney. So, it's just there's something so just immersive about those scents in those spaces that when you smell it otherwise, it just, like, immediately brings you back. So, experiencing that with your kids and your family can be so fun because a lot of the times you're not expecting it, right? In places like Ratatouille or PhilharMagic, you're not expecting for that scent to be a part of the experience, but it just increases the immersion of those attractions so much more when you have that. Um, Now, again, I said we were going to keep it mostly positive. Be warned when it comes to scents, when you go on Figment. There is a not so pleasant scent, so I'll leave it at that. No spoilers for anyone who hasn't been on that attraction. You've heard us talk about Figment plenty on this podcast, but some not so pleasant scents there when it comes to that as well. Um, and another thing that I will mention is that they have previously also included the smellitizer scents in parade floats. So in some of the specialty parades, so not like the Festival of Fantasy or the New Starlight, not like the regular ones, but some of these specialty parades that they've done for like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party and Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, they will also include these on parade floats. So I know that there's a section of the Christmas parade where there is like a gingerbread house that comes through, and you can smell the sugar sweetness from that as the parade float goes by. So the thing about Disney and scents, I feel like is just you never know when to expect it and you never know when it's going to happen, which is kind of a fun aspect of experiencing smells and scents in the parks. So that is kind of my info on scent and smell. Let's now hop to our final of our five senses. We've talked about already touch, sight, taste, and smell. But let's now talk about sound. This is a big one. We've talked about how to prep your kiddos for sound a lot on this podcast, but I do just want to include it here because it's always a good reminder. Um, there's a couple different aspects of this when it comes to traveling to the parks with your kids, going the first time, going the 10th time, that you just need to remember and think about. There are pretty much constant sounds in the parks, anywhere that you go, and it can be very overwhelming. So we've talked here about thinking about earplugs, thinking about where can I go that I know will be a little bit quieter, right? Because even though there is constant sound, there are places that are louder and places that are quieter than others. Um, so thinking about those types of things that you may need to prep ahead for. We talked about fireworks. Fireworks is my first one on this list because you will experience some sort of fireworks in the nighttime show at Magic Kingdom, at Hollywood Studios, and at Epcot. So if you are planning to stay for the nighttime shows at any of those parks, you want to make sure that you are prepared for fireworks. Um, my kiddos have always wanted ear protection for those fireworks. They're now old enough that we just have little vibes earplugs for them, and they each have their own. When we get to an experience that they feel like is too loud for them, not only fireworks, but some of the rides as well. I just hand them their little case. They pop them in, and we're good to go. But fireworks is a main one for that. But there are also some attractions that are really loud. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is one of the loudest attractions at the Disney theme parks. I don't know why it's so loud, but it just is. So keep that in mind if that's something that you want to ride. Um, most of the dark rides at Magic Kingdom are fairly uh they're kind of medium sound-wise when it or volume-wise when it comes to their sounds and soundtracks, but that is one you wanna consider. Some of the shows can be a little bit loud. The Villains show at Hollywood Studios, my kiddos requested to wear their earplugs for that one. That one was a little bit loud for them. So just do some research on those. If you need help knowing which ones are gonna be super loud for your kiddos, send me a message. I'm always happy to help you kind of pick through these attractions and experiences for your situation. But again, just take a look at those ahead of time and kind of plan accordingly for that when it comes to the sound. Now, all of that being said, there are also soundscapes inside of every area of all of the parks that are meant to help put the guest in the mindset of being immersed in those spaces. So, Main Street USA at Magic Kingdom has a very specific set of soundtrack music that you will find there. And it's vastly different from Frontierland and different from Tomorrowland and Fantasyland. Same thing at Epcot as you're walking around World Showcase. Every country is going to have their different uh, ambient soundscape, music, soundtrack that you're going to hear. So some of that you have to kind of let yourself experience because otherwise you're missing out on that immersive factor of having those sounds be a part of your experience. So keep that in mind when it comes to kind of the ambient noise maybe in the parks. Um, but let's talk about some of the live performances that you can hear and catch while you're in the parks, for your sound sense. Um, at Magic Kingdom, the pianist at Casey's Corner, again, we talked about Casey's with the corn dogs earlier, but they have a live pianist that is there in the afternoons. There is the Main Street Philharmonic marching band that you will find along Main Street in various different ways. Sometimes they're going up Main Street, sometimes they're around the hub, sometimes they're on the stage, just depends. But they are a really fun one to stop and listen to. The Dapper Dans, again, those are ones that you'll find on Main Street at Magic Kingdom. Sometimes they're doing like a standstill performance. Sometimes they're up by the stage. Sometimes they're on the trolley that is like driving up and around Main Street. So lots of different places you can catch them and listen to them. There is a new group called Nola's Eighth Note that premiered just a few months ago and primarily is over near Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And they play a lot of kind of like New Orleans jazz style music, and they have a vocalist with them as well. So that is a super fun one if you can catch them. That is still one that I need to catch. I haven't been able to. Haven't been available to catch them during their times that they are performing on any of my trips since they've been around. And then you also will have area sometimes local, sometimes not marching bands that are like high school groups that come through that get the privilege of marching, alongside the parade, either before or after. Sometimes they're with the cavalcades and kind of partnered with them, but you will sometimes find that happening at Magic Kingdom primarily. So that is a super fun experience as well. Over at Animal Kingdom, they have a ton of live performances that will happen. There's the Eco Rhythmics group that you can find, the Harambe Village Street Band, which is a super fun one. The Tam Tam Drummers of Harambe, again, over in the Africa section that you will find. There's like a little stage area as you are walking, kind of if you're between Tusker House and the Safari in that space over there. Um, there is also the Beats and Strings performance, which is a sitar player. And that is more back in the Asia section, kind of near the walkway that leads you to Cali River Rapids. That is a newer one. Immensely talented, super fun to listen to. They play some kind of, um, traditional sitar music, but then they also play some Disney music on that one, which is super fun. I caught that a few trips ago and was just blown away by watching that one over at Animal Kingdom. And then at Epcot in World Showcase, there again, we talked about there's tons of performers in World Showcase, the Voices of Liberty being one in the America Pavilion. That is a super fun one to try and catch if you're able to. They do perform like inside the building in the America Pavilion of World Showcase. There are also the concert series that are there during Flower and Garden and Food and Wine, Candlelight Processional that's there during the Festival of the Holidays. Forgot what festival I was talking about for a minute there. And then they also have the Jammers. The Jammers are a very well-known percussion group that wanders around the different sides, world nature and world discovery of Epcot. Super, super fun show that they put on as well. So many live performances that you can hear and experience while you're in the parks. Um, Again, just be aware of, especially if you've got kiddos that are sensitive to sound, making sure you've got, little lightweight headphones with you, earplugs, whatever your kiddo needs to feel successful. Sometimes they make even like headbands that have like ear protection in them too. Or even all the way down to infants that maybe can't decide for themselves if they need ear protection, but you as a parent, or a guardian of them decide that they need the ear protection. They make little stretchy headband ones, all sorts of ear protection that you can find if that's something that you need. And even I use it sometimes in the parks because sometimes it just gets to be too loud and I just need a minute of a little bit of the volume turned down. So keeping that in mind, there are lots of nowadays there are lots of ear plugs and ear protection that don't completely dampen all the sound. And there are ones that, like, maybe do, like, a 50% adjustment or something like that. So, look into the different options if you're like, "Well, I still wanna be able to hear, but I just don't want it to be as loud." So many different options. Loops has options, Vibes has options. There are a ton of other companies that you can look and find as well. Um, so that is kind of my spiel on sound in the parks. And that kind of wraps up our little rapid fire discussion about how to prepare your child's five senses for the Disney parks. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this fun episode of Mom Street USA. I appreciate you guys being here. As always, if you've got questions or suggestions for future episodes or topics that you'd like to see us cover, please reach out. You can find us momstreetusa@gmail.com. You can also find us at Mom Street USA on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, those places. Also, if you have not checked out our Patreon, please do hop over there. You get some first looks at what our upcoming topics are over there. There's also some exclusive content over there as well, as far as the unedited versions of our podcast live over there, some polls for different things. So be sure to check out our Patreon if you have not. Again, there is there's just all sorts of fun stuff going on over there. So the link to that is in our bio, but it is just under Mom Street USA over there on Patreon. So all of that being said, again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next episode of Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.